Okay, good morning, good afternoon, or for some of our presenters, good evening. Welcome everybody. We have a fairly large audience for today's webcast. Let me introduce the folks that are here, and then we will jump in. The subject of the webcast is Profisee. We're previewing some of the things that are coming in our summer release, which we call our R2 release for this one. And I'll introduce all of that, but we have, let me share my screen so that we have the titles up. So there we go. All right, so I'm Martin Boyd, VP Product Marketing here at Profisee. Also on from Profisee is Eric Melcher, our Chief Technology Officer. He's going to be doing live demo of the two key features that we're going to be previewing here today. We also have Nitin Misra, who's a Principal PM Manager for Microsoft 365. He's going to be talking about adaptive cards, which will become fully explained when he explains them, because that's one of the things that we're integrating into this release. And we also have Chris Ball, who's Data Governance Manager at Lexmark, one of our customers who bought Profisee back in February of this year, who's just going to be a little bit of a voice of the customer, reacting a little bit to what she's seen and talking a little bit about what she and her company are doing with MDM. We thought that'd be an interesting and helpful context for all of you who may be less familiar with us. We haven't typically done these kind of preview webcasts fully publicly. We do them with our customers and partners all the time. But there were some new interesting things in here that we'll get to that we thought might be interesting for a more general audience. There's a deeper dive that gets into some of the other things that are in the release that we'll be doing next week, I believe next Tuesday. For any customers or partners who are on this call, just so that you know there's another version of this that's a little bit deeper for you coming. Okay, with that, let me set up the context, and then we'll have all the folks that I just introduced actually talk and do their thing. So the release of this release, as I said, it's what we call our R2 release. It will be actually available in general availability at some point next month. Eric can dial us in on the detail of that when he starts speaking. But the two things we're going to cover here today are the integration of Microsoft adaptive cards, which again Nitin will introduce, but I'm going to give the context for why that's an important thing. And then the use of OpenAI is something that we've been demoing for a little bit now in kind of a beta state, and it will become as part of the generally available software next month. I think it's important to say that who isn't at this point in the world trying to figure out how to use OpenAI and incorporate it in order to improve effectiveness of various different things. It's not that hard. We discovered to integrate AI, just make a call, produce some data back. What is a lot harder, and what is the difference between an interesting demo and industrial strength software, is how well it's integrated, how the prompt engineering is done to the surface, how information is tracked, et cetera, et cetera. And so Eric's going to get into that and show us what that's all about and how it's done. So just to kind of give the context here. Sorry, I'm just trying to advance my slide on somebody else. There we go. I'm on somebody else's desktop and it's not reacting the way I normally expect. Anyway, so Profisee, as we do master data management, we think of the world as adaptive master data management. Why do we do that? Traditional MDM often comes with rather fixed models and rather narrowly defined objectives, and the use cases are kind of a little bit strict and narrow. So we think that the way to implement MDM in a way that people get more value from it more quickly is to make it adaptive. It should adapt to your organization, your data, your requirements, your people, your workflows, all of those things, so that you're not having to, as a large organization, adapt yourself or change your work habits to the way the software wants to work, or you're not taking some software that someone else designed and kind of maybe made overly strict, and then you're having to rejigger it or reconfigure it so that it works for you. Adaptive software would just come out of the box with the appropriate level of flexibility that would allow you to do that. We're going to talk a little bit about some of all of that. The idea is that it should be fast and easy to use and should allow you to get full coverage of all your data. One of the other problems with traditional MDM approaches is because they're kind of pre-built for certain purposes, you may only implement one or two domains, and there are kind of technical or logistical problems with implementing many domains. We think getting to many domains is critical to covering all of your data estate or your data fabric, as you might call it these days, and really to delivering the proper amount of return on investment, the world-changing level of return on investment that you would want. So we think about adaptive MDM. I'll introduce that a little bit and then show you where these new features fit in. So we think of MDM has certain core features like master data models, match and merge capabilities, data quality, workflow, et cetera, which is where the models are being used to drive the data and the matching and merging of the data and that kind of thing. And then for whatever we want to maximize the amount of automation that we do, but there's certainly going to be an amount of data that doesn't get fully automated, where human beings need to get involved for whatever reason to do some level of data stewardship. So these are kind of the core elements of MDM. The coverage part is all about making sure that you have the ability to implement mastered and reference data domains, as many as you want to get, ultimately to get to full coverage. You'll probably implement one or two in the first wave, and then we find our customers like to then, once they've figured out how to use it and they see the value, they will implement more and more and more. So we think of that as adaptive coverage, something that we've had a capability for a long time. Adaptive rules is again a capability that we've had for a long time, but it allows you to very much tune the models and the system to operate the way you want it to work. Again, that's kind of a core precept of our system, and actually there's going to be some interesting innovations in that area coming forward, so watch this space and you'll hear more about this in future releases. The focus for today, though, is adaptive stewardship. And the idea here again is, if you have human beings touching the data, you want to minimize the amount of time and effort it takes them to do that. So this concept of fast apps is something that we've had in our product for a long time. You can quickly create an application using a code-free interface, really, that allows you to create a mini application that is role specific. So depending on what access you want someone to have based on their role, based on who they are. It's task specific, depending on what I want them to do, whether I want them to do an approval or a match tuning or whatever it is. And it's domain specific. So the way I'm going to do this is going to be different depending on whether it's products or customers or whatsoever. So these apps are very tightly defined so that any data steward who's getting involved can do it in the most efficient way possible. Maximize their engagement and minimize their effort. So these are some examples of the kind of things that customers would build from themselves, like a custom review, looking at cost centers, maintaining products, manager approvals, whatsoever. It's not just about looking at a domain of data, it's about what task are we asking them to do. So this concept of fast apps is something that we've had in the product for a long time. Our customers typically deploy many of these fast apps in order to cover all the different people who need to interact with the software. So the thing that we're talking about here today are two innovations that extend the capability of fast apps in the area of data stewardship. Integrating Microsoft Adaptive Cards brings the work to where the work is done. I'm going to allow Nitin to explain exactly how that works and what it does, but essentially it allows information, tasks, records that require some kind of review to be brought up in a for somebody in Outlook or Teams without them needing to necessarily sign into Profisee, and that hopefully allows them to increase their engagement with minimal effort. In a second, I'm going to just hand over to Nitin, who's going to describe that. The second thing that we're going to talk about here is incorporating the use of OpenAI. We've found in some benchmarks that we've done internally that we're getting faster, more efficient work, around about 80% productivity improvement. Highly dependent, though, I think, on the data and the task, et cetera, but substantial gains. And you'll see Eric show you that in just a moment. And underneath the surface, there is some sophisticated prompt engineering happening, because you don't want to just ask OpenAI for an opinion. You need to constrain the results to something that matches with your master data schema and reference data and all that kind of thing. And that requires, that's again the difference between a demo and having industrial strength software, and also tracking the lineage of any AI generated results. As we inject AI information, so suppositions. Hopefully, they're accurate suppositions, but not suppositions nonetheless. You want to make sure that you know which came from AI, which came from a human being, and if it was prompted by AI and then confirmed by a human being, we would track that too. So we're going to show you those two things here momentarily. So before we get to that, let me ask Nitin from Microsoft to talk a little bit about the Microsoft adaptive cards capability and where it fits in Microsoft's landscape and how they expect folks to use it. Nitin.
Sure, Martin. So if we can move a slide. Yeah, so probably one more slide, Martin. For next few minutes, what I'll cover is adaptive card construct and how it fits in the extensibility platform of Microsoft 365. And I would emphasize on the value that our users and customers get through this extensibility platform. I'll start with a problem we are trying to solve, and this is what we call as a productivity paradox. So for digital workers, they are working across the enterprise applications as well as productivity hubs. And switching between applications has become a part of their life. The Alt tab comes so naturally to us. Also, if you think of another scenario where, say, a profile has come for the approval, generally it's a link, and we click on that link, which takes us to the external application, breaks our flow of work. And we don't even realize, but as per certain studies, nearly 10% of workers' annual time it goes in that unproductive context switches. So that is the problem at Microsoft we are trying to solve. How for the organizations we can stop this context switch wastage in the productivity, and how we can allow them to continue in the flow of their work so that they can do more with less. If we continue next, Martin. So with extensibility platform, what we are enabling customers and user is to traverse the complete journey without leaving the context. So starting from discovery, users can search and discover the content from external enterprise applications while being in M365 hubs. And these hubs can be Outlook, they can be Teams or any other hubs. They can create the content which can be then pushed onto external applications without switching the context. Through this extensibility offering, they can share and collaborate on the external content within the M365 hub. So for instance, if I have received a profile for approval or for some changes, and I am not the right owner for that profile, I can share that profile as a card from Outlook to Teams, and the information stays live and always in sync. And the final piece of the experience is actionability. So the platform allows users to take actions within M365 hubs, be it Outlook, Teams, to complete the business processes. And these actions are not just the basic button-based actions like approval or disapprovals. It could be anything. For instance, identifying and selecting the users via people picker, working on various other experiences like drop downs, text boxes, updating the records, and so on and so forth. So the whole plan is to enable users to continue within M365 hubs. If we move ahead, Martin, so what I want to cover is the extensibility platform. And Martin, we can build this slide. I think 3-4 clicks.
It's coming.
Yeah. So one more. That's it. So at the core of this platform lies various app models, and app models are various constructs under which we allow various features to be developed. On the left hand side of this core are two message extensions and actionable messages. So these are the app models which enable users to interact with the external application data. So message extensions are a powerful uh, app model which allows to search or create and then share rich cards and conversations. And actionable messages are, you can think of something which are system driven. System sends a notification and users take actions in line, whether it's Teams or Outlook. On the right side are the add-ins and Microsoft graphs. These are, again, powerful constructs which enable users to interact with M365 data. So for instance, I can interact via add-in on the calendar or email data and continue taking actions on it. And via Microsoft Graph, I can build in intelligence through search within the M365 data. This whole core is powered by underlying adaptive card and supported by common admin center. And the extensibility value is further enhanced by bringing in intelligence through Copilot or BizChat. So this robust platform, it allows our partners to build apps with rich set of capabilities so that extension to the business processes can be provided, which allows users to act on those business process steps within the M365 hubs. We'll move ahead, Martin. So we'll talk about message extensions, considering this is what is a key app model which drives that extensibility notion. So you can think of message extension as a way for users to engage with the external application through the calls of web services. And this construct is available both on Outlook and Teams. So with this capacity, users can query or post information from external service and share that information in the form of cards right into a message. Although the images on the right are a bit small, but here you can see within Outlook, I have searched for the information, and that information is embedded as a card, which is adaptive card within my email. So the whole URL will be unfurled as a rich enterprise application content using the adaptive card framework, and enables users to complete the workflows whether they are on Outlook or Teams. We'll move ahead. So now we have created so far card-based message extensions which enable us to complete the workflows. A lot of times my users are working either on Outlook or Teams, or it could be other M365 hubs. And the natural way of progression is whether I can share the cards, which are the UX constructs showing me the external application content over the other hubs. So adaptive card-based loop components enable that portability across M365 hubs. And it not only allows the portability, it promises certain capabilities. So one of the capabilities is the liveness. So irrespective of the hub, whether it's Outlook or Teams, wherever that card stays, the information always stays up to date. That is, the card is live, and that card is always in sync with the underlying application. So if it's a Profisee card, the information, whatever is there on the Profisee profile, that will be updated on the card wherever that card is residing. This card is not only embeddable, these are also actionable. And the biggest advantage is once they have been built for any hub, say for instance, I have created it for Outlook, I can extend it to Teams without a developer doing anything. And later in session, we will see how Profisee is leveraging all these message extensions to enhance the productivity at work by bringing data stewardship capabilities. We'll move ahead, Martin. So why M365 extensibility? What we have realized is that over the years, this platform has become a driving force for growth for our external partners. With M365 extensibility, you can boost productivity by reducing the time and effort it requires to complete workflows. It reduces that context switch and thereby increasing the engagement. You can delight the users by bringing in intelligence, thereby accelerating the transformation of workplace users through Copilot and WeChat. And it reduces the friction of discovery of services as users discover content in M365 and complete the workflows. So moving to the final slide, these experiences can be modernized across the value chain of the organization, be it sales, service, HR, finance, or operations. And these can be enabled. These experiences can enable workplace users to do more and ensure that they are rightly set up for maximum productivity. So more can be, our users, customers can search more on this. If we search the term Outlook Lookbook or extensibility, M365 extensibility, those details can be provided. Those details can be found on those sites. So with that, Martin, I'll hand over back to Eric.
Yep. So I'll just pick up here and then hand off to Eric. I want to say thank you, Nitin, for being here on the webcast to talk about this. But more importantly, I know that you and your whole team have done a lot of work with Eric and his team to get this integration together. And Adaptive Cards is a new product for Microsoft that's being rolled out. So there's new things being discovered on both sides, but I know it's been a very successful collaboration. So let's jump onto the next part and have Eric start to show us some of how all this stuff comes together.
All right. Thanks, Martin. If you want to go ahead and take your screen share down, I can share my screen.
I will do that. And just as I'm doing that, some of you have already discovered this, but I should have said at the beginning, feel free to jump into the chat or Q&A for any questions or anything that you want to get into discussion. We have not just us here, but there's a few other people on the back end who can answer questions. So go ahead, Eric.
All right. Thanks, Martin. All right. So, in this demo, we'll start off walking through our integration with OpenAI. So we'll start with a focus on how can we automate everything we can. And from there, we'll transition into, okay, when I do need to do data stewardship or I need to collaborate with others across my organization because there's really a true human intervention needed, how can we collaborate on that in a more natural way that reduces that context switching that Nitin referenced. So here I am in a Profisee environment. And I've got a number of different fast apps, and in this case, I want to zero in on my fast app that's been created around product data. So now I'm here within a curated data stewardship experience, and the first thing a lot of people are looking to do is find the information they're looking for, right? And you can do that. We've got these nice ways of visually filtering data within the Profisee platform. If you want to build out a more complex filter, we also have this filter dialog that allows you to really build out a really complicated filter dialog where you can and or and a bunch of things. And the first use case that we satisfied on what is a pretty lengthy roadmap of OpenAI features that we have planned is the ability to just describe what you're looking for. So, and you can get pretty creative with this. So for example, if I just go in here and say warm colors, what we're doing here, and this is what Martin alluded to, is we are leveraging OpenAI, but we're doing all the prompt engineering behind the scenes so that users can just do their work in a very natural way. And we're handling all the back end work to sort of give OpenAI context to what are we doing, what is the data model that this particular customer, what's the domain that we're managing, what are the data elements, what are the available values within here. And so very quickly I can type warm colors and OpenAI is able to figure out, well, we're dealing with products. Products have this property called color. Color has this list of values. And these three colors are the colors that would be warm. And so very quickly we could go in here and find specific data. And it's one thing that's fascinating about OpenAI is just how it makes things that seemed, relatively speaking, intractable or hard to do from an engineering perspective in the past, pretty achievable now. So we can do much more complicated stuff. We could say bicycle related products. And, historically, what we'd have to do here is we'd have to go and kind of sift through all the various subcategories of products, or figure out how our data is modeled, and experiment with different filter criteria to come up with a way to generate this list. And what OpenAI is able to do is sort of, based off of the context that we give it, identify, a way of finding products that are related to bicycles. So it'll do is it'll identify the subcategories that seem to be related to bikes, like bicycle frames, whole bicycles, pedals and components, etc. But it'll leave off things like, shorts and shirts and socks and clothing related items. So if you think of it from a productivity perspective, while that took OpenAI 10 or 15 seconds to sort of come up with an answer, the amount of time that would have taken for me as a human to sit here and build this out one by one is pretty significant. So it's a really interesting way of how we can just make it much easier for data stewards to find the information they're looking for in a much more sort of natural human way. So that's the first use case, which is natural language search. And then the second thing that we've done, we've actually embedded OpenAI capabilities into the data stewardship experience itself. And so, one example of what we're able to solve here is a long-standing problem in the MDM space, which is, hey, I've got this unstructured information, right? In this case, we'll use this, children's bicycle or women's bicycle from Walmart's website. And, we have a number of our customers, and part of their business model is, hey, we purchase this product, we're a distributor, we take this product made by this manufacturer, and then we resell it. And in that case, what they're often trying to do is trying to take that product details and descriptions from the manufacturer, and then align it to their standard way of representing on their website, et cetera, et cetera. And historically, that's a very sort of human-powered activity, right? Where they'd have to go through and read all this information and then mentally translate that into, the data that's been defined within their master data model. So what we can do now with OpenAI is a lot of the same stuff. We're grounding AI and what are we trying to accomplish? What's the data? What are the elements available? Et cetera, et cetera. And what this then does is it allows us to very quickly take this large blob of unstructured data and actually fan it out into a number of discrete attributes that basically define this product. But what we're doing here, in addition to that, is providing an experience where the user can sort of oversee that process. So now I can look and I can see, okay, it figured out a name. It didn't find a SKU within that information. That's something that I'll have to figure out. But it's figured out that it's a mountain bike. It's suggesting mountain bike. But then there's other little subtle things that we're doing here we think is critical to really sort of integrating with these types of large language models in the right way. So in this data somewhere, it says that this bicycle is light blue, and that's great. It figures that out, that the original color is light blue. But more importantly, what we're also doing is we're allowing OpenAI to standardize based off of the reference values available within our organization. So when we sell these products or list these products on our website, we have a standard list of colors that we allow people to pick from. And we want people to pick from that standard list of colors versus just creating this sort of hodgepodge of endless variations of blue. And down here, it's generated a long form marketing description that I can then go and tweak and kind of modify onto what I like. And so very quickly, we can have a dramatic savings of time, but there is a way for the user to ultimately participate in this process. And so that's an example of using this in the scenario where I'm creating, some new information. But we've also added the ability to actually, integrate this in with the experience of a user that is actually updating existing information. And so let's see, I'm going to open this guy up. So here's an example where if I look at this and I spot it, this is a bottom bracket, which is a component, but it's assigned to bottles and cages. Now in this scenario, if I go in here and I paste in this description of a product, this will give you an example of where we're baking OpenAI experiences into the data stewardship flow, but indicating to the user, where has OpenAI happened, where has it suggested new values, but more importantly, where is it suggesting updates to values. So here you can see that it's filling in, so the original color, the size, and unit of measure. Those were values that were missing previously, and I can look at those and see if those seem correct. But more importantly, I can also see that it's suggesting a change from bottles and cages to bottom brackets. And so here's where I can look at what was here before. I can see that OpenAI is suggesting an alternative value. and I can either accept or reject that modification of the value. So this is a way that, again, we can allow OpenAI to sort of happen naturally without interrupting the user's flow, but make their job easier, reduce the amount of work that it takes, the time and the clicks, et cetera, to get the job done. Now, the way we've gone about doing this, going back to Martin's theme of adaptive, is, our customers can model virtually any, model and manage virtually any master data domain their business requires. And so what we've done as a part of configuring this fast app and this experience that this user's interacting with right here, we've made it to where you can configure which fields acts as inputs to OpenAI, and then which fields are we trying to predict or suggest coming out of OpenAI. So that's now fully configurable. So you could, for example, say, I want to use these 8 fields as inputs to generate a product description. Or I want to have this field suggest these 3 fields. I want to have this other 4 fields suggest this 1 field, et cetera. So you really can pick and choose and mix and match. Where do we think OpenAI can actually accelerate and streamline the data stewardship experience while having the user along for the ride? And at the highest level, the way this is working is we're allowing customers to basically wire the Profisee platform up to their Azure OpenAI service. So this is powered by the Azure OpenAI service, which is something that's available to organizations. And within Azure OpenAI, you can pick the model you want to deploy. And the trick here is that all of these requests and all of the sort of grounding and context that we're giving to OpenAI is going into your Azure OpenAI service to the model that you've specified. And all a global admin of the Profisee platform has to do is basically specify the OpenAI endpoint that you want Profisee to leverage and the credentials to use that endpoint. And at that point, all these experiences just automatically light up and are available. So that's our first couple use cases that we're delivering in this release around OpenAI. There are additional use cases that we have planned around the data stewardship experience. But then we have on our roadmap also intentions to leverage these same types of capabilities to actually automate facets of the administrative experience. Again, suggesting things, automating, making things where configuring the Profisee platform is more a matter of sort of overseeing the suggestions, and everything sort of just goes faster and easier. And ultimately allowing these types of technology to be used sort of in mass on unattended basis behind the scenes as well, but making sure that we can distinguish between data that came from traditional sources and data that was manifested out of these large language models. So really excited to get this into our customers' hands and sort of start to see the ways that our customers are applying this and leveraging it within their enterprise, and obviously taking any feedback back and continuing to evolve this and making it more and more valuable as we try to sort of automate everything that we can when it comes to the data stewardship experience. So now we're going to transition from OpenAI to, okay, we're going to transition roles here. Now I am a product manager, and I'm responsible for the components line. And in this scenario, I'm managing some bottom brackets, and I notice here that there's an MSRP missing. And now my job as a product manager is all about describing the product and all of its properties, et cetera. But sort of financial based information should come from our financial team, our finance department. And so I can open this up and I can see this missing value here. But at the end of the day, I need to get someone else to weigh in on this. And this is where adaptive cards comes into play. So historically, what I'd have to do, I'd have to initiate a workflow internally via email, email somebody on the finance team, hey, this is missing, can you fill it in? Or send them a Teams chat, and then they have to go find the individual record that they're looking to correct, et cetera. And that's all a lot of context switching and extra friction within the business day. And that's what we want to satisfy or solve via the adaptive cards experience. So these are the types of things that Profisee, we've been wanting to solve in the product for a long time. But our challenge has always been the sort of technical limitations of how can we do this in a way that sort of scales, works across lots of different applications, et cetera. And that's exactly what the adaptive cards interface that Microsoft is delivering is allowing us to do, which is we can leverage that adaptive cards technology to develop this interactive experience that will then work broadly across a growing ecosystem of M365 and other Microsoft products. So in this scenario, the new experience that we have here is the ability to say, hey, I want to share this record to somebody within Microsoft Teams. And I go ahead and click the Share to Teams link here within here. And what this will do is load up a dialog that allows me to specify who I want to share this record with. And then also, some information that I can embed a question here. So Now I can go in here and I can specify who I want to share this with. In this case, I want to share it with Jordan Davis, who's someone on our finance team. There we go. And I can sort of give an idea of what we're looking for. And what you'll see here is that this is actually a rendering of this record in sort of a compact form, but it is actually online and live. And so now what I can do is I can share this. And then when I navigate over to Microsoft Teams, I've got my standard chat with Jordan that I use every day. And what I'll now see here is an adaptive card that's been rendered. And so, I think a lot of us these days are spending a lot of our time in Microsoft Teams. This is clearly an application that we're using all the time. And here you can see that Jordan's on the other end responding. Now, this adaptive card is actually in here. I can open it up. I can see the data. And in this case, Jordan's seen it. He's gone ahead and fixed the record. And just to show how this is a sort of online integrated experience, I can actually refresh this card. And upon refresh, I can actually see the updated value reflecting here. And I can also see, of course, the reflected value back here within Profisee. So if I refresh this, boom, problem solved. Jordan didn't have to go log into Profisee. He might not even know necessarily what is Profisee, what is this application. And the other key thing here is that we've been able to collaborate on this data stewardship experience within Microsoft Teams, but Microsoft's provided all this sort of infrastructure behind the scenes for us to do things like, if I had shared a record with Jordan that he didn't have permissions or security access to, one thing Adaptive Card is doing is actually sort of transitioning authentication from my credentials to Jordan's credentials. So if I shared something that he's not supposed to have access to, he won't see it. If he didn't have rights to update this record, he wouldn't have been able to. So it's not a way of sort of end-rounding security. All of that is still in effect, but it's allowed us to bring this experience to Jordan within Teams. But the same thing works within Microsoft Outlook as well. So and ultimately, we'll be doing things like allowing people to create complete tasks that have been assigned to them within Outlook, right? So now when I get an email, I can open the task, I can complete my work right there as I go through the rest of my emails and go about my day without having to context switch between all these different applications. So that was everything that we had prepared for the demo. I'll hand it back over to Martin. I think next Chris will share kind of the perspective from the customer and how they're looking at leveraging these new capabilities.
Excellent. Thank you, Eric. Let me just share my screen so that, we probably redundant, but we have a slide with Chris's face on it. So we'll put that up because we have it. So I want to introduce Chris Ball, Data Governance Manager at Lexmark, one of our customers. They've had Profisee since February. And just to get started here, Chris, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your role and Lexmark? And we'll talk a little bit about what you're doing with MDM.
Sure. So again, Chris Ball, I've been the Data Governance Manager here at Lexmark since about 2019. I've been with the company over 20 years, but I'm new to the governance role, what it entails, master data management. My team focuses specifically on just master data management in the domains of customer, vendor, product, material, pricing data, and we also just recently got finance master data. So our company actually makes printers and we're expanding into other areas, but our MDM system is actually quite old. We've had the same system for about 15 years now. So we've been engaged with Profisee this year to replace that system that's quite outdated. We are actually starting simply with the domains of customer and vendor in our go live that's planned right now. So that's a little bit about us and what we're looking for with Profisee. Some of the things we have issues with in our master data that we're trying to solve as a company is really it gets down to what you guys were sharing about increased engagement with our data owners in that data and establishing what we here call our single source of truth, or what you all call your golden record management, to say this is master data. These are the right values that need to be in position and pushed downstream. So that's one thing we're trying to solve for. And also just having a better user experience for, again, I said our system's 15 years old, and having that more better engaged, simplified user experience that's more intuitive is very important for us. So looking at the demos that you guys have shared with us today, and what we're really excited about here at Lexmark is really first that open AI capability that Eric had demoed. I can already see use cases of how that's going to make life for our users a lot simpler. Being able to easily search our list of active vendors in Germany, or how many customers do we have in London. That sort of simplified natural language search without having to scroll through the 1-200 fields that we have available to figure out the right ones. That's going to make a much better user experience. Being able to kind of gather that information from a website and input that, again, that user experience of not having to key in all that information, or in our case, mostly miskeying in the information. And then we as data governance have to go out and figure out where they miskeyed the information and fix it later downstream. So that's where I really see our open AI capability coming in that makes that better user experience. The adaptive cards, we're really excited about that here. Again, being able to share via Teams or Outlook will be very powerful for us in terms of being able to quickly engage with the business to talk about the master data values, what needs to be fixed, where we're seeing issues, and get their input on how to fix the information. The other thing I'm interested in on the adaptive cards of what potentially we could use it for is with our Dynamics 365 environment, if there was the possibility to embed it there. You talked earlier about the increased engagement. So from our perspective, our sales guys are our data owners when it comes to customers. They are the people engaged with the customer, building that relationship, and are really the starting point of that information. And then that comes through us later as the data governance to review that information. But our sales guys work almost exclusively within the Dynamics 365 environment. So if we had a way to engage with those users in that platform, to share our Profisee data, our golden record, and be able to let them work within that tool themselves, adjust the data as needed as the owners, and have that flow through us. Again, that's just a super opportunity for us. And it re-emphasizes our position that you're the sales guys, you are the data owners of customer data. You need to take an active role in managing that data and ensuring that that golden record that we're governing is correct, so that everything downstream where we're sending that information will be available. So those are really the main use cases that I'm excited to share in the future as we develop our tool.
That's fantastic, Chris. I had a whole list of questions, and you just answered all of them without being promised. Thank you very much for that. It's a good thing, seriously. I'm just curious. You talked quite a bit about the data problems and how you might use these features, but as you were looking to upgrade, let's say, or modernize your MDM approach, what are the business things that you're trying to accomplish? And then why did you pick Profisee as your kind of path forward? To the extent you can talk about it. I'm not sure how much you can talk about it.
Yeah, again, our main business case that we were trying to solution is simply the replacement of a really old, outdated system. Over the last few years, the business has come to us on several occasions to say, can you introduce this new master data field? Can you do this? Can you do that? And unfortunately, a lot of times the answer has been no, our system is quite old to try and add these new fields could cause other problems. And then also defining that ownership of, okay, you're asking for this this new field, but are you truly the owner? Are you the one that validates and confirms and make sure that that's all correct? So building in Profisee, we see a much more that adaptability, being able to customize the user experience based on, are you the person entering the data? Or are you just approving it? And how that could work. Those are the main cases we're working through.
Fantastic. And someone in the chat just asked the question I was about to ask. Can Chris share her experience regarding the initial implementation? I think you're not live yet, but correct me if I'm wrong. But how's the journey been so far?
Yeah, so we actually engaged with Profisee last year in 2022 just to kind of do a proof of concept to really understand what the tool can do and would it work for our needs. So we've been only in the build phase for the last few months with Profisee to build our tool, define the user experience that we want. But my team has really spent probably the last year combing through our data on customer and vendor to really understand what are the fields we want to bring into this new tool. What's some old data that has no value that we're not governing? Get rid of it. Don't bring it into the new tool. Optimizing our data structure. We've talked with the professional services team about how we can flatten our hierarchies and make that more sustainable. We've so really that implementation, we are still in the process. We've got about 3 more months till go live, but we're just starting with customer and vendor. We do have the opportunity to expand later at potentially bringing in the product, material, finance master data. But like you said, being adaptive, we want to start small, learn the tool, what's possible, and then build on that.
Fantastic. Thank you. And you said just customer and vendor. that's not, for a lot of people, that's a
still a lot.
Pretty big list.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very nice. And thank you for all the things you talked about, adding new fields and that kind of thing. That is, of course, why we think of ourselves as adaptive, because those are the things that come up all the time. And some systems are, it's easy to do that, and some it's a lot harder. So thank you for all of that. We have about around 10 minutes or so left. So let's open the floor for any questions for anything. For Profisee, Eric, Nitin, whatsoever. And Eric and Nitin, I can see that you've been answering questions in the background as we've been talking. Is there anything that you want to just recap, either one of you, just because sometimes a typed answer is not sufficient?
Yeah, nothing specific. I think, there's a lot of questions around kind of how this works and what can it do. So, one thing I'll mention here is that, this is not one of those scenarios where like, hey, we've got OpenAI figured out, we've got all this sort of use case or adaptive cards are solved. We are certainly planning on sort of engaging with customers, getting feedback on how this works, and then figuring out what are the additional use cases that we need to work to satisfy. Or alternatively, what are enhancements we need to make that we've already done to really kind of hit the center of the bullseye. OpenAI is still relatively new. We're actually working with the Azure OpenAI team, collaborating with them as well, engaged with them. And, what's interesting is that a lot of enterprises are still sort of trying to figure out what is their policy around OpenAI. It's a lot of it is software vendors like Profisee that are really sort of forging ahead with actually integrating these technologies in with their platform. So, we see a lot of opportunity here, and we also think there's probably a lot of ideas out there that will come from our customers and how we can actually take this and evolve it. So, so that's something that we're very excited about, getting this out into the wild, seeing how it gets used, how it's adopted, and then how can we continue to build on this going forward.
Fantastic. One of the things, or a couple of the things I know that you kind of discovered as you went along, Eric, there's different large language models available to you within Azure OpenAI, and I'm curious what your evolving thoughts have been around that, and also the cost of it. It's a very compute intensive thing to do AI. What's the cost of engaging with additional services as you go along?
Yeah, so for the interactive scenarios that we cover today, we've been testing against both the 3.5 and 4.0 models within Azure OpenAI. So, what we've found is that the 4.0 model tends to be better at sort of getting subtlety and understanding context and things like that. The 3.5 model is almost miraculous on itself. The 4.0 model does take it to the next level. We saw about a 22x difference in cost. So on the 3.5 model, where we did a lot of our development, it was dollars for all the calls we made, testing and developing and doing QA, et cetera. The
By
4.0
dollars,
model,
I mean only a small number of actual dollars, not lots of dollars, right?
Dollars, like pennies a day. So it's very, very. The 3.5 model was almost very inexpensive for even a large volume of activity. The 4.0 models does start to add up where we're spending dollars per day, but still not really that material. So that's why we left it open for customers to pick the model based off their experience. So we're not sort of forcing you to pick one. You have control over the model you use. You have control over your costs, et cetera. And as we go down and tackle other use cases, we'll actually add flexibility for you to say, hey, we're doing like a very simple activity here. We're trying to discern states and countries and cities from zip codes. We can use one of the very, very inexpensive models for that. There's this other one where we're really trying to discern something complicated from some unstructured data. It's worth the investment in the more expensive model and the more sophisticated models for that. So we will be, as we tackle more use cases, we'll sort of provide the flexibility customers need to leverage the right model for the job so that they're actually paying and consuming for the appropriate level of services.
Fantastic. I saw some enthusiasm in the chat for adaptive cards and how it can work. And also Chris said that she's looking forward to integrating all of that.
Absolutely.
Nitin, I'm curious, your product is relatively new to the market, was only just really announced a few weeks back. What kind of overall reception have you had to adaptive cards from a broader Microsoft perspective? We're happy, but how's the rest of the world reacting to it?
I was really amazed by the flow that Eric showcased, and I guess this has been the reaction with all the customers and partners that we have been working with. I guess from our perspective, what it would be important is, as you mentioned, we are just starting. So, as customers use this platform, we would love to establish that feedback loop so that, both Microsoft and Profisee can improve the offering for the customers.
Fantastic. I'm just looking at some questions, Eric, about the actual release dates and what's coming up next. Do you want to just thumbnail any of that for the audience?
Yeah, so this will ship here in the early September timeframe. So the OpenAI stuff is basically dev complete. The adaptive, there's actually some other odds and ends in this release beyond these two kind of marquee features. So we're very close right now in our current sprint that wraps up next week. Will basically be dev complete on everything. We've just kind of wrapped up the last kind of final pieces of adaptive cards. So we'll be transitioning into sort of regression testing and then shipping in the early September timeframe. Beyond that, we've got some major investments that we're making on the product. Sort of the broad categories will be more use cases around OpenAI. We've got some major investments we're making in our sort of matching entity resolution engine that we're really excited to bring to the market. We're also making some major investments in sort of integration and making it sort of easy for sort of data to flow in and out of Profisee through a broader variety of cloud sources and make it easier to integrate Profisee with the vast expanse of applications and services out there that customers are looking to integrate with. And then we've got a number of exciting, we were in this private preview with Nitin's team on adaptive cards. We were obviously working with the OpenAI team. We're involved in a number of other private preview type engagements with Microsoft, and are kind of we're very excited about some of the things we're working on there, but it'd be a bit premature to sort of share that publicly because a lot of it's still under cloak and dagger and NDA.
Perfect. All right, so we have just a few minutes left. I'm just trying to keep scanning the Q&A and questions. If there's any more questions, or please drop them in the Q&A, and we'll try and tackle them before we actually wrap up. But as we move towards that, let me just advertise a couple of other things. So if any of this is interesting to you and you want to engage further with us, obviously we have a website. If you go there, you can request. We do weekly standard demos. You can request a custom demo if there's something that you want to specifically see. You can engage with sales from there. More importantly, the things I wanted to talk about are we invest in a lot of software, of course, and we invest in a lot of other things beyond that to try and help our customers be successful. One of them I want to give a shout out to here is Malcolm Hawker. Malcolm is an ex-Gartner analyst who has been with us now for a bit over a year. He runs a monthly podcast called CDO Matters, where he's not talking necessarily about Profisee, but he's talking about best practices, industry trends, and he brings to that all of the expertise of a very experienced Gartner analyst. He was, in fact, the co-author of the last 3 Gartner Magic Quadrants on MDM. So he knows a lot about the topic. And you can engage with him directly on LinkedIn. It's like getting a free Gartner inquiry if you want to go down that path. Anybody who's taken the time to be on this webcast, I suspect will get a lot of value from listening to Malcolm through all of the different ways that he engages with folks. So you can check him out on, if you go to profisee.com/podcast, you'll find all the different ways to subscribe, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and all that kind of thing. Another thing I want to just make you aware of is that we have a summit coming up, an all-day virtual event on September 14th. We call the Data Hero Summit, where we're talking a lot about the, we'll be talking about software, we'll be profiling some customer stories, and we'll be talking a lot about principles and best practices and all the things that the people who are out there, battling and wrangling the data day by day are doing in order to improve their businesses. So I would encourage you to sign up for that. We have just a tremendous lineup of speakers. A lot of people already signed up for this, and we expect it to be a great event. So is there anything else? I'm hoping, Eric, or anybody else that you've been monitoring the chat, is there anything else that we want to cover from the Q&A before we hang up?
I don't think so. Nothing's jumping out at me. Okay.
In that case, I want to thank everybody who's been on the call, all of the people who attended. Nitin, thank you very much for being here and giving your perspective on cards and for engaging with Eric and his team over time. Thank you, Eric, for the demo. And Chris, it's always great to speak to a customer in any context. So thank you so much for being here and hearing your perspective too. With that,
thank you for inviting me.
Thanks, everyone.
Speak to everyone again at some point in the future. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.